Okay, hi everyone. We're back in the second video of chapter 5 lecture about leisure in past societies. We're learning about leisure's meaning in a different historical time. So in this video, we begin with the fourth historical time we talk about, which is ancient Greece. And then that's the first red highlighted time that you must know, we must know. We gotta learn this before passing this course, okay? So ancient Athenians, back in the time, ancient Greek people, considered leisure as a way to the good life, which required, interestingly, knowledge, right choices, and moral conduct. So you can see leisure meant very different things for them a little bit, probably from many of us. Leisure was a way to the good life, and it was about knowledge, it was about right choice and moral conduct. Not necessarily a lot of leisure activity today are related to that. As an example, for example, our famous philosopher called Plato, he believed in developing a person through education, so it's knowledge, philosophy, music, and gymnastics. So both mind and also body. And a talent, skill, arts. So there's some leisure in that there too, music and gymnastics, right? Aristotle, another famous philosopher, and he's very important for leisure studies, considered a life of contemplation, thinking about these things, education, philosophy, music, and gymnastics, and even politics, as the best use of quote-unquote free time, leisure. It's very different things, maybe. But we still probably do some of us do those things and, seriously do music and gymnastics, for example. And you may even find a fun and joy in your education, possibly. Some of us do, maybe. And Aristotle wrote in his book called Politics, that happiness, although happiness meant a little different thing, we're going to talk about that in minutes, belonged to those people who have leisure. But by leisure, he meant these pursuit of knowledge, right choices, and moral conducts. Things like education, philosophy, music, and gymnastics, rather than, for example, watching TV, of course. They didn't have a TV. This is a picture of Plato and Aristotle, the guy who is pointing there, up above the sort of heaven thing is a Plato, and the one who is kind of, putting his hand front is the Aristotle. By the way, they're kind of discussing. Discussion was a big part of their leisure time, and they're talking about serious, of course, issue probably. Their views of leisure represented what we call the leisure ideal. And by that, okay, this is a little tricky. What leisure ideal means is that it's a belief that the leisure is a force that can make us honorable. So leisure is a good thing, and only really good thing, moral conduct, knowledge and all that kind of stuff counts as a really good, pure leisure in a way. And an ideal leisure back in the time was called scholae, which is this highlighted red word, scholae. And it's the origin of English word school and leisure, we consider, which included something like reading, thinking, debating, discussing, studying. That's what they're doing in this picture, right? Debating, that's something is up there, something important is up there. Aristotle says, no, teacher, it's right in there in front of us in the things that we see, as well as math, arts, and sports like gymnastics. So there's a leisure, really leisurely thing as well, arts and sports. But at the same time, they meant very specific things such as reading, thinking, discussing, debating, studying, those educational matter as well. So we have to be very careful about what they meant by scholae and leisure ideal. Tricky. Now, we use often Plato, Aristotle's words, how they consider leisure as a very important thing. It's a very noble thing, very honorable thing to justify importance of leisure. What we study as a leisure study, leisure researchers and leisure practitioners. right? We do that a lot of time. Philosophers said thousands of years ago that's important, so it's obviously important for us. But then there's this professor who is retired from University of Waterloo, and I was at the conference together 2017, and we had our presentation in the same session. After my presentation, he stood up, and he started to say that, you know what, we quote Aristotle and those philosophers to justify the importance of leisure, but we actually shouldn't. We have to be very careful about how we are using these historical and philosophical accounts. He argued this: we have all been made aware of the role assigned to scholae leisure, which is basically leisure ideal. It's moral, it's important thing in our life, as opposed to askolia, which is a labor, which Aristotle, we think, didn't think it's important in terms of happiness. But also, Professor Zizek said that we are less aware of the fact that in assessing different types of polis, which is cities back in then, Aristotle conceded that the most viable, feasible city was actually the oldest, where people lived by agriculture or tending of cattle, had no leisure free time to partake in politics, and found their employment, work, labor, askolia, more pleasant than the cares of government, which is kind of one way of scholae. So he's saying is that, well, we quote Aristotle to make a point that the scholae and leisure is more important than the work and labor. But actually, in a different parts of the same book, Politics, Aristotle himself said that, well, actually, if you look at the real world and countries, it seems that the people in those older form of, system where people doing agriculture and using a lot of time on work seems to be more happy, satisfied. And that may actually make sense. We have an expression in English called, what is it? How does it go? Idle hands are devil's workshop sort of thing. When you get bored, people started to do something, wrong, not good type of idea. Maybe that applies here. Maybe later on, we talk about industrial revolution time. The same idea kind of comes into, or medieval Europe, we talk about work ethic, and a similar idea comes in too. So maybe there is today's counterpart idea here too. So be careful. The philosopher said that the leisure, especially the scholae, specific type of leisure, is important. It's one of the best way to pursue what happiness meant to them. But in reality, in terms of feasibility, maybe work was important too. Leisure wasn't necessarily the best thing either. So we have to be careful about that. And ancient Greece is also known for ancient Olympic Games. We have today's contemporary modern Olympic Games once in 4 years. Of course, Tokyo 2020 was delayed because of COVID. Very interesting time. Back in the day, though, in ancient Olympic Games, we had running, horse racing, wrestling, and savage sports, like bloody sports, basically. And all of that, these Olympic Games, activities, as well as some of the stuff that Plato and Aristotle talked about, scholae, was really available only to aristocratic, so it's elite, right, higher social class, young, native, meaning they're not slaves, males, not females. There's also a bit of documentation that a female participated in some of the Olympic Games, but really it was very gender segregated, and a class segregated society. The Aristotle and Plato, people like them, could engage in those, debating and discussing those contemplation, because there were lower social class who supported their free time. Okay, so there was a problem, dark side to ancient Greece leisure meanings as well. And obviously there's a contemporary counterpart. We have modern Olympic Games. Maybe it's less bloody, but contemporary Olympic Games are also kind of, we could consider that as a kind of proxies to wars. We don't do wars much anymore, but instead we use Olympic Games to show national, quote unquote, national power in a way. Another red highlighted very important historical time is ancient Rome. They viewed, ancient Romans, they viewed Greek as a political and a cultural model. So they learned a great deal from them, but at the same time, they had a very quite different view of leisure. So that's a very interesting time. And there are very important concepts from this time, which we still use. For example, mass leisure. Leisure practices available to many people, the majority of people in society, which is very different from Greek. Remember those good leisure, ideal leisure, leisure ideal contemplation was only available to those limited elites, but in this time, Roman time, was more, it came down a little bit and it was available to many more, a little more people, mass people. And if you think about it now, a lot of leisure we do, watching sports, for example, watching TV, what else? Outdoor recreation, going to the camping. Those things are mass leisure in a way that many people can do in our society. Bread and circuses. This is a very interesting expression. It's basically use of mass entertainment, providing some fun for social control and appeasement, as in people in the power like politicians and kings, they're getting a, liking of people. So they will like you, they will support you basically. And they provided something like a parade. They provided something like gladiators fighting against each other in a Colosseum. Maybe you can imagine how it looked like by watching a movie called Gladiator, by Russell Crowe, which is still, it's a very interesting movie. Anyway, now the question is, do we do it? Bread and circuses. Do we do it? How do you think today? When things are really difficult, for example, in terms of COVID-19, there's a lot of frustration. Do we provide some leisure activity? Can you think about any? When there's a political frustration scandals, do we provide some entertainment? What about other countries, not just Canada, what about US? What about maybe China? What about Japan? What about other countries? Do they do that? Think about that. Maybe not just a big level, like for example, nation, but maybe a small level in your family, maybe your parents. When there is some source of frustration, when you're mad at them, did they provide some entertainment? Maybe take you out to the mountain, maybe give you some gift so that you would like them, you'd be happy with them? Did they do that? So maybe still we do use this mass entertainment for social control and appeasement as well. Ancient Rome was also famous for a great number of holidays. They had 175 official holidays. How many do we have now? Maybe a couple dozens, if most, depending on the countries, right? And these were actually holidays. People had a free time, of which 101 were theatrical entertainment. Again, it's a mass leisure, potentially bread and circuses. Ludi, there was something called a ludi that were public games as well. And then finally, heated public bath, like in this picture. Right, it's like a hot spring. If you've been to Banff, you can imagine those things. As a Japanese person, we love hot springs, and I love public bath. Like it's just most relaxing thing to me. It's me, Japanese. We love bathing. So I would be happy if I were in ancient Rome. But you can see though, these are very fun thing, quote unquote, fun thing to do, right? And it's very pleasurable, relaxing, feels good type of thing to do, which is very different from what ancient Greek did. So contrasting them is very interesting. We can see a different meanings of leisure. We can also see a different meaning of happiness, right? So at the top, we have meaning of, ideal good type of leisure, and then the word for it. Ancient Greek used the word schole, which meant contemplation for Aristotle, and really thinking about and debating about those education, philosophy, math, arts, and gymnastics and sports, right? And arts and sports in a way that they're doing it and they're being excellent in it. Okay, the pursuit of excellence. And they use the word concept called eudaimonia as basically a pursuit of quote unquote happiness, the pursuit of good life. So for them, happiness was a good life. It's characterized by moral conduct, excellence in things. Okay, that's what eudaimonia is. So that's happiness, the second role and third role. Okay, and they're related to each other, schole and eudaimonia, pursuit of happiness. Good life. On the contrary, ancient Romans, they use a word called licere, which is basically the origin of the word called license. It's a permission to be free. Now that's a little different. And when you get free, in terms of leisure, what did they want to do? They wanted to pursue a pleasant life, the life that feels good. And it's called hedonia right now. The hedonistic, maybe you have heard. Something that makes your body feel good, maybe. Like a public bathing, those bathing. I mean, maybe not for you guys, if you're from Canada, public bathing is a very uncomfortable thing, but as a Japanese, I'll be very, very happy, relaxed with that. Watching gladiators fighting off each other, bloody sports, exciting, very instinctual type of thing, that makes you excited and feel happy, feel good. And that was hedonia, and that was a kind of leisure that was used a lot, and enjoyed. So there are very, very different kind of leisures, meanings of leisure, and views of leisure, and practices of leisure. You have to know. You have to clearly differentiate ancient Greek and ancient Roman leisure, and also a bit of type of happiness as well here. Okay, that's very important, and I think that's the end of video 2, and I'm gonna see you in video 3.